Hello, everyone, and welcome to another NPDA Edge webinar. Glad to have everybody getting situated and settled here. We got a great lineup of attendees, and I got to say, we've got an impressive presenter here too today. Tom O'Connor, namesake of Tom O'Connor Sales Academy, is going to be, as you guys are well aware, giving a used motorcycle masterclass today for our NPDA members and some of our guests as well. My name is Dave McMahon. I'm the executive director of the NPDA. Really having a blast with these webinars in our Edge series that, as you guys know, we've just launched here in the last couple of months. And we have some that are archived. We've got another one coming up on May 22nd that you'll be seeing more email registrations from. So as you see those pop in your email box, go ahead and register. As is the case with this one, you don't have to join us live. They'll be available on demand for you and your staff to watch as you wish. And we've got some, as you've hopefully seen on some of our social media and website stuff, we do have an Edge dealership leaderboard. So it kind of recognizes all you guys who are spending the time and putting the effort in to attend these kind of classes. So you get points, a point system, and we'll have some polls popping up throughout the webinar to keep you engaged. And it's not going to be a problem with this one because I tell you what, I've seen Tom O'Connor present a handful of times, both online and in person, and one of them's no better than the other. These are fantastic. He's going to keep you engaged, whether he can shake your hand in person after or get you to crack a smile here on one of these virtual situations that we've all become accustomed to. So as I mentioned, we do like to keep you engaged. So one thing I want to do is just have you just launched our first poll question of the day. So again, we do have some partners on here too, but for dealers only with this question in particular, if you guys wouldn't mind just taking a couple of seconds and telling us about how May started. I know we're only a week into it, but we would we're just trying to get a bit of a feel. Obviously, know that the first handful of months of of the year weren't anything to scream about, but hopefully spring has sprung. And yeah, so looking at these, appreciate everybody hopping on here and doing this. This is super helpful. And then we'll have some specific polls related to Tom's presentation as we get rolling here too. So so Tom, as you can see here, actually, if you say 1 out of 3 of our dealers on the call here are above plan, and another, let's call it almost half, are on plan, and only another third below plan. So we did one of these webinars. We've done a couple of them here in the last couple of months, and it seems to be trending better here today than it might have been 3-4 weeks ago. So yeah, that's awesome. Great way to start. Appreciate everybody participating in that. And we're going to get you guys these poll results after the conclusion of the webinar. So with that, you'll see me popping in here as Tom proceeds with his presentation. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Tom.
Thanks, Dave. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. I'll try to make good use of our time together. I know how important it is to be on the floor and working deals and talking to prospects. So hopefully there's a couple of ideas you can steal from me, because I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I do recognize great ideas from some of my operators. So when I hear or see something that works, I try to give credit where credit is due. So we're all kind of a product of the mentors we have and the coworkers and dealer principals and managers that we work for. And I've been blessed to work with some great ones. Some of the points of interest that I'm going to share with you today have been not learned while I was in the trenches, but afterwards in developing software that's done 6.5 million appraisals. So I've learned a lot about the pre-owned industry, not only from the inside out as a salesperson and sales manager and appraisal manager, but then as someone who got a chance to look at data and trends and market demand and all those changes that happen. So as we say, a used motorcycle masterclass, I don't know if education really happens in just 1 hour, but if you can go back into your business and look at it through a different lens, maybe from a different vantage point, and make the necessary changes to implement better processes and best practices, I think it could have a big difference and a big impact on your bottom line. And that's really what we want to talk about is how does the used motorcycle business right now drive profitability and volume as it relates to what you're facing today. So I'll just kind of jump into it and do the best I can in under an hour and make good use of our time together. But at the very end, you'll have mine and Natasha's contact info. Please feel free to contact either one of us. We want to be resources for you moving forward. And that's 24/7 because we're all in it together. So let's just do a quick overview of the, let's see, the agenda if I could. There you go. Okay, so want to talk a little bit about the pre-owned market, the proper mix, and how that drives revenue. We'll discuss some acquisition strategies, the appraisal process, because we're all taught when we're very young that the stove is hot and you make money on used when you buy them right, not necessarily when you sell them. And so that's one of the givens in the universe. The appraisal process, kind of talk about some best practices there. And then you might hear me say multiple times, the goal is to buy right, price right, and turn faster. If I could boil everything I'm about to say down to one sentence, that's what I think it is. It's how do we buy them right, price them right, and turn faster? And anything I say doesn't replace your local knowledge or your expertise and experience. I just want to drive some thought and conversation around what can we go back and do better as it relates to our own internal process, our reconditioning, our pricing, our markdown strategies, and our turns. And we'll talk about how to streamline the reconditioning and what that can look like, and then managing your pre-owned inventory. And I use those terms intermixed. When a customer's trading in a bike, it's a used motorcycle, but when I'm selling something, it's pre-owned, right? So it's perceived value. So let's jump into it. We know that used is important. And when I remember in 2017 that the dealers were focused so much on new that nobody was focused on used. And the independent dealers were crushing the dealerships that had new brands because they just had better internal processes. Their profitability was all dependent on pre-owned. And to be fair to the dealers, the brand dealers, those independents don't always do the level of reconditioning and they don't commit to the quality of the bike that you guys do. So sometimes that affects pricing as well in your market. We know that pre-owned right now is helping a lot of dealers across North America weather this economic uncertainty. And what I'm finding is that the current market of economic uncertainty is affecting new much more than pre-owned. So the dealers that are all in on pre-owned are absolutely mastering their local market. They're dominating. So we know that pre-owned is great also because it appeals to a budget conscious customer, and it appeals to riders that only want used. And so that's why we talk about things like mix. If we don't have what they want, those obviously result in lost sales. So here's some benefits. We know that there's increased floor traffic. We'll also increase our sales if we have the right units at the right times for the right price for the right customers. We can achieve higher margins on used when we buy them right, when we control those acquisition costs, when we control reconditioning. And we know we can have faster turns than on pre-owned than we can on used. And that leads to that dynamic inventory, right? I talk about dynamic inventory. I was talking to a dealer and I said, you've had that motorcycle online for 541 days. And he said, yeah, well, that's part of our marketing strategy. I said, I understand that, but what you fail to realize is that your customers are visiting your website a lot more than anybody in your dealership is. And they're seeing the same motorcycles for a year and a half. What kind of marketing strategy is that? So having a lot of turns creates a dynamic inventory, and customers will spend more time saying, wow, their inventory is really cool. It's changing all the time. Maybe I need to get in there before this particular bike that holds my interest gets sold. And so I think a dynamic inventory also leads to less risk. Because as bikes sit on your floor in your inventory, as you know this, as they age, I look at the number we put on a bike when we acquire it is like throwing a pebble in the pond. And the longer that bike is in inventory, the more it has a ripple effect on not just the bottom line, but also on, our liquidity and space. If I hold on to a motorcycle, a pre-owned bike for too long, um, I'm probably going to be underwater eventually. I'm probably trying to figure out what my wholesale loss will be. I could have sold that bike for a smaller margin more times than holding out for all the money. And so one of the things that I'm finding is that we're prisoners of hope. Our sales or acquisition or inventory managers are prisoners of hope, and they're waiting for that right customer to come in. But all of a sudden, that 120-day-old unit that I've been holding on to has now been acquired at the auction or on a trade-in the same year, make, and model by my competitor across town. And they own that bike for today's money, not 4 months ago's money. And then they can maintain a healthy margin and price the bike lower than mine. And so that's one of the things that happens that we don't think about when we put a new bike deal together or we take a bike in on trade. We don't think about how soon can I sell it? Should I chase a margin or should I chase a turn? And so that's one of the things that I want you to think about is how can we go from chasing margins to chasing turns?
Tom, that's a good time just to, if everybody just take a couple seconds here. You talked about, just the biggest risk when you're looking at your inventory. I think you talked about the feeling or gut. Just have a quick question here. So what's the biggest risk when managing used bike inventory? Paying too much in commissions, trusting your gut feeling instead of data, not having enough new bikes, or over investing in floor plan. And yeah, so if you guys could just take a couple seconds here, that'll be helpful to just talk about some of these things as Tom's presented them here. So yeah, it looks like everybody's listening to you, Tom. So the biggest risk would be trusting gut feelings instead of data. You want to harp on that one more time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the data, and we have such great data sources right now with NPA and JD Powers and our 2-year history of selling that particular year, make, and model, that it trumps intuition, right? You might think, I should take this bike in on trade because we're good at it. Then you look at your 2-year history and you go, oh man, the turns were 90 to 100 days and my margins were 6 to 8%. And you think maybe we're not as good as I thought we were at selling that particular year, make, and model. So that's why I believe in the data over my intuition. But if you've got somebody that's really that's been in the business for a long time, their intuition's pretty darn good. If I add the data to that, I think you've got probably a rock star opportunity. So
sure. Appreciate it.
Should I go on?
Yep. You can proceed.
Okay, so keys to success. I'll just do some of the boring stuff first, and we'll jump into a different level. But I like to encourage my appraisal managers to have an investment-minded philosophy. Look at every one of these used bikes that you're going to acquire from various sources like it's a stock. And that stock has equity in it, and it also has inherent risk. And you think, okay, well, if that's the case, I have to look at each acquisition as an investment that I'm using my dealer principals investment dollars to acquire. There has to come a point where I have to make a tough decision and not fall in love with that stock or that motorcycle. So that's why everything I say right now isn't race to the bottom, but think about turns. Think about maximizing profitability and have turns always as part of the equation. I used to chase margins and not worry about turns, and then I had to deal with wholesale losses. And then as my motorcycles aged in my inventory, my salespeople knew that I had it too long, owned it for too much. They weren't going to make anything if I did sell it, and they started to walk customers past those bikes. So it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your salespeople are smarter than we give them credit for. They know what's up. So My goal is always to buy right, price right, and turn faster. I want to offer the proper mix. I never thought about mix as a sales manager. I was just trying to put every deal together as I could, living in the moment. I love working deals. I love, closing deals. I love overcoming objections. But when I got out of the business and started helping dealers on another level, that's when I had to learn about the strategy, the process, the accountability, and the mix. Right? How do I have the right mix? So when I say make the tough decision today, if that thing is a DO double G, or you think it might be, or your 2-year historical data tells you that it's a slow mover in the last 2 years, and it's probably a slow mover now, get rid of it, right? Make sure that those investment dollars come back to you and you can use it on something you can turn 3, 4, 5 times over the year, as opposed to holding on to that bike and then ultimately deciding, I can't believe that thing didn't sell, right? And one of the things that one of the cures for all ills as it relates to managing inventory is conduct a daily review of your used motorcycles. Don't have any surprises. Don't look at it so infrequently that you go, wow, that thing's still here. How come? Well, take a look at the market. Take a look at the fact that there's 13 of them in your market and you're priced 11th out of 13, right? Take a look at the fact that you're not priced to sell. You haven't looked at the price in too long. And that's why one of the things that I like to track is date of last price change. Make sure that you're updating your pricing on all your used bikes every 30 days, even if it's just a few dollars, because it helps with your SEO and your SEM. If you've got bikes that haven't been price changed online in over 60 or 90 days, man, go in and change those prices so you get back into the search mode for people that are looking for those motorcycles. That becomes stagnant if you don't change the pricing in a ongoing way. Okay, product mix. I don't want to go into too much about product mix, but I look at customer demand. Am I looking to acquire a bike that nobody wants, or I've got 2 of them and I can't move those 2? I was looking at a dealer that had a 304-day-old bike, and they brought in the same year, make, and model for about the same money 2 days prior. And I thought, why did you allow history to repeat itself? You have a 304-day-old used bike that hasn't moved, that you own wrong, that you priced wrong, and now you've done it again with the same exact year, make, and model. So in a case like that, if you want to take that bike in and put a new bike deal together, I understand it. You have to drive, volume and profitability, but take those dollars and move them. And it pains me to see a 304-day-old bike, because now you're underwater. And underwater is the relationship between invoice and either NPA or, say, JD Power's clean trade. I used to look at invoice against JD Power's clean trade, but I find that JD Powers is too far in the rear view mirror. And that's a sobering thing to do, is when you compare every one of your bikes, what you own it for, against NPA. But if that's the driver for turns and profitability, then so be it. I also look at current market conditions. Seasonality comes into play, of course. If it's October and I'm taking a bike in on trade and I'm out in Montana or Wyoming, I might own that bike until April. Well, I have to think about that because the book's going to change a couple times over the winter. And I have to figure out, how do I buy my bikes back a book. I always thought that if I ever learned to play an instrument, I was going to be in a garage band, and the name of the band would be Rough Book. Sorry, the only people in the business would get that joke. As I got the Led Zeppelin thing behind me. So anyway, think about available budget. Obviously, if you're a dealer principal or a GM, you probably set that bar. But if you're a manager, you have to know, what are you allowed to spend, and then how do you prioritize where those investment dollars go. So taking into account demand and market conditions and seasonality should absolutely affect the number you put on an acquisition. And I am a big fan of pressing a button and pulling the 24-month historical data out of your DMS. My software does that because that is another data source that's super powerful, because then there's no more mystery as to how good or how bad we are at selling that particular year, make, and model. And if I see really slow turns and really low margins, why would I bury myself in that acquisition? Why would I buy that thing for clean trade? I'm a prisoner of hope, and I'm already upside down or underwater on day one. And then you add in reconditioning. And if you're like a lot of stores, reconditioning is being dictated by the service department as opposed to the sales department. I hope that's not happening to you. But then you take all of that into account, and really what we've done is we've minimized our ability to maximize our profitability. Product mix. Here's an example of a dealer that I was discussing product mix. And I said, you have a really strategic approach to the used motorcycle business. And he said, yeah, my goal for this year, 2025, is to sell 172 used bikes. I said, okay. And I said, what are the factors that go into that? And he said, I want to think about what my day's supply of inventory should be. And he wants to have a 55-day supply of motorcycles. And I said, well, how many does that mean that you have to have in inventory at all times? And he says, I have to have 31 bikes in inventory throughout the year. And I thought, okay, so how are you tracking that? And he said, I'm tracking it by model. It might be small cruisers, large cruisers, touring, dual sports, stuff like that, just as an example. But he's also thinking price range. Is it 0 to 10,000, 10 to 15,000, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, and then over 25? And so I was thinking, what a great way to kind of strategically approach this portion of the business for 2025. So my suggestion would be, know how many you want to sell for the year, figure out what your day supply are, figure out how many bikes you need at that, to hit that number. And then if you review your inventory every single day, you should never be surprised at what's happening. Here's some roadblocks. Lack of interdepartmental communication. It's interesting. I'm currently trying to help every one of my dealers convert 5% of open repair orders in service to new bike sales. That's my goal. I was in a store that was at 1.6%, and I said, congratulations. And he goes, what? And I said, well, you're tracking how many service customers you're converting to new bike sales. I said, that's really the first step. And then you want to go from 1.6 to 3 and 3 to 5. Do you have the right people talking to those service customers? Are they giving the right range or numbers, or are you working those service bike deals correctly or the most efficiently as you could? Find out where the gaps are. You're already tracking it. Now let's figure out, how do we take that 1.3% to 3, or 1.6 to 3, and 3 to 5, and then who knows what could happen after that. Another roadblock is not paying attention to your historical data. If you're not paying attention to how good or bad you are at selling that particular bike, it could hurt your effectiveness. Not tracking inventory. When I say to a dealer, why do you have 78% of your inventory over 120 days old? Well, a lot of times they just didn't know. They just didn't know that stuff was aging and they weren't moving it, or they blame it on seasonality, which is an easy crutch. Not leveraging automated tools. I know that there's some great tools out there that can provide the data to us with the click of a button. And I like that. It just automates your appraisal process. It automates your inventory management, automates your reconditioning, helps with interdepartmental communication, because now you're not tracking paper, and it's all through mobile apps and software that's on your desktop. And then not updating your strategy. Do you meet with your managers during the course of each quarter to say, here's what we did well, here's what's aging, what are we going to do with these 8 bikes that we're already 12 grand upside down on or underwater on? And that's the relationship between what you own them for against, say, NPA. So
cool.
Much to avoid. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Tom. So this all kind of gets back to your idea earlier of the taking that investment-minded approach. So if you guys could just take again a couple of seconds here, we got another poll question. What's one benefit of taking an investment-minded approach to pre-owned bikes? You'll always beat your competitors' prices, your service department will stay busier, you can advertise more aggressively, or your pre-owned units turn faster and generate better margins. So we're batting 100% on this one, unfortunately. So as we saw at the beginning, it looks like I assume you guys are ahead of the game here in your pre-owned business, and hoping to get some more tips from Tom here. So this is awesome to see. Also, might go back to the fact that you guys are kind of, if you are strong in pre-owned, you could be outperforming some of the the previous month's data that we showed from our previous two webinars in terms of your overall performance. So yeah, appreciate everybody taking the time here with that one. And yeah, pre-owned units turn faster and generate better margins.
Perfect. Awesome.
And that's, yeah, you go ahead.
So some areas of acquisition, obviously, we like to think our owner base, because we've already sold those customers once. They've already trusted us enough to say, I'm in, let's do it. I'll do business with you. I think that's a great opportunity. Unfortunately, we have so much turnover in our sales ranks in the industry that what happens a lot of times is when somebody, moves on to a different career, we take all of those owners that salesperson sold, and then we just farm them out to everybody. And I remember one of my salespeople said to me, I don't follow up with my own owners. Why would I follow up with some guy who quit? And I thought, oh no. I said, you might think differently if your name was on the sign out in front. And he said, do you think my name will be on the sign out in front one day? I said, no, not until you start following up with your owners, you dummy. So I think owner base retention is an incredible area of opportunity. I think we've historically done a poor job of it, because let's face facts, our salespeople are not process oriented. We're salespeople. We want to fly by the seat of our pants. We're not necessarily time conscious or strategic or organized, and that's why great use of CRM tools is, I think, paramount to being able to dominate in your local market. You give me a store that, it's funny when I ask a sales manager, hey, what CRM are you using? And then they tell me, and I say, if on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your sales department's utilization of that CRM tool? And I hear 5, 4, 6, and I'm thinking, wow, that company's cashing the check, whether you use 40% of it or 80 or 90% of it. I put that on my sales managers to make sure that whoever your CRM company is, make sure that you're getting a 30 to 60-minute training class webinar with your CRM company once a month. Put your sales team in a room in front of a TV screen or a desktop, and have some rep from their company take a look at what you're doing well and what you need to do better at, and then do a 30-minute refresher around this, right? Here's what we're doing really good at. Here's what you guys maybe could work on. And it just keeps that refresher, because, let's face facts. I'm old enough to remember that I grew up with paper and pen. Okay, that's not true. I remember stone, tablet, and chisel. And now with automation, we become lazy and creatures of habit. I see it with my software. They use the portion that they're comfortable with and that they know about, and they're not pushing the boundaries to utilize the software that's out there. So commit this year to doing a better job of utilizing the tools that your dealer principal is already paying for. Auctions, obviously, it comes and goes with auctions. I think there was a time where we were gun shy after COVID, because once the COVID hangover happened, and now I'm looking and we're back to spending money like drunken sailors at the auction. So you got to be really cognizant and make sure you do your due diligence. Download those upcoming bikes, compare those bikes that are at the auction to who's got that same unit around you. How long have they had it in inventory? What do they have it priced at? And strategically look at that motorcycle and make a decision on whether or not you even want to buy it. Because if you don't know what's happening in your local market on that particular bike that you think you might have an interest in, you could get your lunch handed to you on day one. So as far as auctions go, do the legwork prior to the auction. Know who's got it in your market, know how long they've had it, know their pricing, and then decide, here's the top number I'm going to pay for this bike. And if it goes above it, I'm moving on. Let it go. Service department, we talked about that. My goal is to get every one of my stores to 5% conversion of open repair orders to go home on a new unit. And if I fail, I want to fail spectacularly by doing an amazing job. But remind yourself of one thing, or be aware of one thing. I never want a customer leaving your service department saying, I'm not going to do business with Bob's Bikes because they always try to sell me a new one. I'd rather have them leave with the feeling that I love that store, because not only do they take care of me in service, but they always give me the opportunity to find out what they give me for my bike. And one of these days I'm going to take them up on it. So it's not always what you say, it's how you made them feel, right? And so I like calling service customers when their bikes are in service and saying, hey, great news. Your motorcycle is resting comfortably in our service department, but it showed up on one of our wish lists. And what that means is it's a bike we'd really like to own. And then I drop my tone of voice and get conspiratorial and say, you know what, this is the time of the year where we're heavy on new units, but we're light on nice pre-owned bikes. And it's a bike that we'd probably overpay you for. Have you given any thought to getting on something new? If I could make the numbers work out in your favor, right? So it's all word tracking. It's how do I bring that motorcycle in right? How do I take them out of the market before they ever were in the market? And I think service department conversions are just, I just think they're out there for the taking. Because what bothered me is when somebody would own one of my bikes and then they'd come in, a year or 2 or 3 years later on something else that they didn't buy from me. And I thought, what happened? Oh, I ran into a salesperson in another store while I was on a ride. Oh man. And I lost like 6 hairs every time that happened. So I also like winter storage. Not everybody on the call probably has space for winter storage, but talk about if you use a mobile app to take pictures of every bike that's in your dealership for winter storage and for service, then, you can actually spend the time necessary to work with parts or work with service on upselling, not just additional work, but maybe selling them something new or newer. Private parties, I have a handful of stores that do a dynamite job of reaching out to people whose bikes are for sale online. And I don't know if anybody on this call has ever sold anything in the last few years. It's a bike, truck, car, boat, whatever it might be, side by side. But every lunatic in the world is out there. Every scammer in the world is out there trying to steal their baby. And what you want to say is maybe the dingo stole your baby. I'm sorry, that's an old movie reference. But what happens is people get frustrated and it takes a long time and there's risk involved with strangers coming over. And I just think that if we reach out and say, hey, I noticed your motorcycle's for sale online. I work for a dealership and I actually work for somebody that will write you a check for your bike today. And you'll never have to worry about it again. How soon can you bring it by so we can give you all the money for it? Would sometime today or tomorrow be good, right? What I really want to key on is the pain, the frustration, the fear, the risk. I'll make it all go away and write you a check. It doesn't mean I'm overpaying for the bike, but I am selling some sizzle, right? You got to sell the sizzle over the phone and you sell the steak face to face. And somebody said, well, aren't you giving them false hope? No, I'm giving them hope. Who am I to decide before seeing the bike that it's not worth more than what they thought it would be worth, right? And we're all chuckling at that. But I'll have the numbers conversation face to face. What I really want to do is have that customer say, hey, when's a good time to stop in? And let us pay all the money for it. We'll write you a check and you never have to worry about it again. Sorry about my dog going crazy. And then
word tracks in the system.
Oh yeah, and in the Tom O'Connor Sales Academy, here's a plug. We have all those word tracks for all those calls, and and all of those objection handling. So that's why I put together a sales academy, because during COVID, I couldn't be in dealerships 175 days at a time. So we put it all on a platform, and people can watch those things, 3 to 5 minute videos, 24/7. There's hundreds of them in there. So, and we're adding to.
And they're fantastic. And Tom, as he mentioned, has done these type seminars in person as well. So keep an eye out on the NPDA Dealer Connect schedule for this year, September 21 to 23 in Columbus.
You're awfully kind. As far as appraisals go, I'm a big fan of using a mobile app. Take close-ups of any imperfections. We are all taught that silent walk around. And when a customer sees you pull out a mobile app and take pictures of their bike, any imperfections, any nicks, dings, dents, or anything that's excessive wear and tear, it helps to devalue the bike in the customer's eyes without beating them up with a sledgehammer. And what I really want to do is I want to buy bikes right. And if we overpay on day one, it puts our investment dollars at risk. They should scan the VIN, record the miles in the customer's name, and be sure that every appraisal is on an appraisal log. If you're my competition across town and your appraisals aren't going on a log and mine are, my find a deal meetings will be better than yours. And if there's a prospect that went to your store and got an appraisal at my store, I think I have the competitive advantage. So I can't talk enough about how important it is to have a log of all of your appraisals, and then have your most talented people go through them every day to do find a deal meetings. Leverage your data sources. I like to know every single dealer around me and what they have, how long they've had it, what the pricing is. If I know more about my competitors' used inventory than they do, I'm going to dominate. I'm going to sell more. I'm going to make more. NPA, JD Powers, Black Book, Cycle Trader. Those are obviously the ones that everybody's probably using. I think Black Book and Cycle Trader the least. If you're looking at your surrounding dealers and there's 15 of these in the market, the age of every one of them, then you put that with NPA and JD Powers data, you got a pretty good idea what you need to buy that bike for and what the sellability of it is at that time of the year. Price right. If there's 20 of these bikes in the market, I find that the sweet spot is in the first 4 to 5 spots. You do not have to race to the bottom. You don't have to be in the number 1 spot to successfully sell a used motorcycle. But I don't want to come in 18th out of 20th. I don't want to come in 15th or 16th or 17th out of 20th. You're behind the 8 ball on day one. And if I know everybody that has that same unit around me in my market, I have a pretty good idea of how fast or slow they're moving. That affects the number I put on a bike. So think about those first 4 to 5 sweet spots, or first 4 to 5 pricing spots. That's the sweet spot. And it still gives you the ability to buy them back a book and price them to sell. Look at the age of your competitors' bikes. Are they slow or fast movers? Justify ACV. I love when a sales manager or a salesperson goes out with a printout that says, look, Mr. Customer, this is what I can buy the bike for at the auction. I can buy the bike for 10.6, but I'm giving you 11 grand because you're such a good customer of ours. Well, guess what? 10.6 might be, rough book or wholesale. And if I'm, 3 or 4 or 500 bucks over that on a consistent basis on some bikes, then I'm still giving that added value to the customer while treating them better and saying, hey, I can buy it at the auction for this, but I'm giving you this because you're such a good customer. Go ahead and give yourself the okay, and we'll get the new one cleaned up. Congratulations. Bang. Look at your 24-month history, and then think about demand and does it fit with your product mix? Dave, do you have a...
Yeah, just as you guys have already seen here, appreciate everybody just hopping on these, kind of getting the flow going. That's awesome. Yeah, so just why does pricing right on day one matter? We have 100% correct answers on this, helps margin and increases turns. Yeah, that's just one of I think we got one more poll coming at you, so we'll let you get back at it, Tom.
Yeah, we didn't make them tough enough for them. We'll get it right next time. We'll make them harder next time. Controlling reconditioning. I found that I thought reconditioning was somewhere between 800 and 1100 nationally across the country on an average. Now that could be higher or lower. An average is an average, but I thought 800 to 11 is probably not, going to freak anybody out. But here's what I would say. I would say no rubber stamping. Don't just, okay the reconditioning because you're, ordering lunch or you got 2 deals working. The 2 deals take precedence. The reconditioning can wait for 15 minutes to find out exactly what should be done. Use a checklist. Don't over recondition. If you buy a bike too close to clean trade and then you over recondition it, you're behind the 8 ball on day one. I would suggest incentivizing speed for the service department, because obviously those guys and gals back there are putting you in a prioritization box. And if you're not prioritized where you need to be, that money is dead money. From the time you bring a bike in to the time it's retail ready and online and on your showroom, that window is dead money. And so I want to have those bikes retail ready as fast as possible. And I want to focus on the cost-effective repairs as well.
Awesome. And then, yeah, this ties right into, as we learned in our practice run yesterday, that, first step in controlling reconditioning costs, having a clear appraisal and recon process. Again, we are batting 1,000 with this long-lasting career. Thanks for everybody hopping on. Got a lot of familiar faces on here, and yes, hang around till the end. We'll see if you have some questions we can get to Tom too.
As far as reconditioning, here's what I'm throwing out. It's my dime store 2 cents version of the world. I think if it's under $700 in reconditioning, should be retail ready in 3 to 5 business days. If it's 700 to 1200, should be retail ready in 7 business days. And if it's over 1200, I have to consider sending it to the auction or a wholesaler, because it might just put me too close to that underwater mark. So things to consider. Or if you haven't had these conversations, maybe they're worth having back at your store with the service people and sales managers. Managing inventory. I think we need to watch trends, demand, and pricing. Pricing is crazy right now, and I see stores that have 38 and 40% margins on their used bikes, and the bikes are aging. And I'm thinking, if you would have taken a 20% deal, why are you holding out as that bike ages? Because as it ages, here's what you own it for, and you're going to get too close to what your underwater mark, right? The longer you own it. But the manager says, I stole that bike. Yeah, you stole it 140 days ago and it's still in my inventory. It's not a steal anymore, dude. It's mispriced. You didn't change the price in 120 days. The thing's stagnant, and you start to look at your VDP and how many views of, people looked at that bike, and you think people stop looking at that bike. And so I think the world is changing, and who's mastering it is the ones that have the local knowledge, that understand demand, that understand mix, that aren't afraid of turning on a computer and using a tool like MotoMate that gives them all the data they need to make smart decisions on day one. And those are the people that aren't going to become obsolete and dinosaurs, because the data is there. You just have to know what to do with it. And as bikes age in inventory, your investment dollars are at risk. So I always encourage people to buy bikes back a book. And they say, yeah, that's easy for you to say. We're on a webinar and you're in the confines of your home office. You're exactly right. But if your managers that are appraising these bikes or working these deals and presenting figures aren't good at overcoming objections, you're going to pay too much. You're going to over allow for the wrong units. You're going to have too much in these things on day one. Anybody that's presenting figures to customers today has to be a ninja with overcoming, you're not giving me enough for my trading, because the customer has a game plan and you have to have a better game plan. You do this every day. They do it every 2 to 4 years. So it all goes part and parcel with putting the right number on a bike and justifying ACV. And you can use the data to justify ACV. And then when you own a bike right, and it's in your inventory, and you got a buyer that wants a discount, you can turn the screen and say, look, man, I understand you want a discount, but I got the lowest price one in a 150-mile radius. In fact, now that you brought it to my attention, if you don't buy it, I think I might reprice it because I'm so much lower than everybody else that has the same bike. It's a classic takeaway. And people believe what they see, not what they hear. When you could turn the screen and show them, man, I mean, that's how you maintain margins. And that's how you maintain margins and you increase turns. I say chase turns, not margin. I was slow to come to that realization because I was trained one way. My dealers come back from these 20 groups and they beat the snot out of me because my margins. And I had to convince them, right? Because they're all talking about margins. But then there's one dealer in those 20 groups now that says, wait a second, let's take a look at what those dollars have done for me. I'm turning my inventory 6-7 times a year. You're turning it 3, right? So when you can start to change your dealer principals' perception and have them understand what, the best use of their money is, you'll start to chase turns and not margins. And you'll make more money because you'll eliminate wholesale losses. And then have a markdown strategy, right? That's also a sobering thing to have. But, if you're sitting at 35%, your bike's 120 days old, you missed the window, right? I mean, let's be honest, you missed the window. So have a solid markdown strategy. I have a store out on the East Coast in Ohio that starts out at 35% on day one. At 30 days, they go to 30%. At 60 days, they're at 25%. At 90 days, they're at 20%. And at 120, they're gone. And they tied the sales manager's pay plans into the markdown and turn strategy. So I was like, that's awesome. That's a dealership that has it together and is dominating in their pre-owned market. And then here you go. Turn your inventory, right? Look at your underwater report. If you look at your bikes from 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, and then 120 plus, what you'll see is you're in the good for 30 days. If you own your bikes, if invoice is higher than NPA value, you're spending too much on day one. But you want to be to the good. But as those bikes start to age, they start to come, right? They start to get close, and then all of a sudden you're underwater. So take a look at your inventory every day as it ages and the relationship between what you own it for and what NPA value is. Because if you own your bike for $2,000 over NPA, and I can buy it from NPA for $2,000 less, I'm going to price it accordingly, and I'm going to sell mine before you sell yours. Now, NPA might be a bad example currently because of what people are spending, but I'm thinking about buying it right. And my bike today is going to be bought much better than your 120-day-old bike. So think about that. It's not just holding onto a bike for too long. It's what if my neighbor buys the same bike for $2,000 or $3,000 less than I paid for it? They're going to eat my lunch. My bike's going to sit. They're going to sell theirs. They're going to get that money to work for them again on something else. Set and measure turn times. Keep your inventory fresh. Reduce your finance costs. People say I made 20% on that motorcycle. No, you didn't. It took you 146 days to sell it. What were your holding costs, right? Were they $700 on a $10,000 motorcycle? As a sales manager, I never had that conversation with my dealer principal or general manager. They never talked to me about holding costs. I had to learn about it later on and how it really affects profitability and capital liquidity. And that's what we say, maximize your profitability and your capital liquidity. If you bring a bike in that's a slow mover, you put the deal together, take the bike in, send it to your wholesaler, send it to the auction, get your money back and get it working for you on something that you can turn in 30 or 60 or 90 days. And don't hold out for maximum gross. Maximum gross is a tough thing to hold out for because as the bike ages, maximum gross becomes less and less a reality. And there's our contact info. Take a picture of that or copy and paste it or put us both in your phones You can get me 24/7. If you want me to ever do a deep dive into your used inventory, I'll show you your price position of every single one of your units in your local market. It's pretty powerful stuff. And and if you want a free trial of the Tom O'Connor Sales Academy, we'll give that to you so all your people can jump in and get a refresher on handling objections, gaining stronger commitments, getting more write-ups and sit downs, and doing a better job of utilizing, the ways to follow up with people and get more, sales opportunities. So we're happy to give you that as well as a partner with NPDA. Feel free to take advantage of free trials, and we'd love to. We say play before you pay, right? We're all in it together, and even if you use it in a week or two later, you go, my people loved it, but I don't want to pay for it. Doesn't matter if we sharpen the blade on the axe a little bit and they sold a few more bikes, then everybody wins. So,
Yeah.
any
That's
questions,
awesome.
Dave, from anybody?
Yeah, you guys, if you have a question, I'm not the biggest fan of the typing them into the chat, but I can get you on speaker. So if you just want to put in the chat that you have a question, I'm glad to make your audio active, and you can just talk direct to Tom if you're interested. And or yeah, feel free to put them in the chat as well if that suits you better. That's fine. But yeah, it's been awesome to have Tom O'Connor Sales Academy as a partner since 2024, shortly after came on board. Tom and Tasha were all about joining us. And again, as I mentioned, Tom at the Dealer Connect conference last year in Columbus, Ohio, had a couple of great presentations. The one I really took away was the one you might be familiar with is the swim move. But that's one you only get in person, which is why you guys got to come join us in Columbus this year. So
Good
yeah.
couple days.
What's that?
It was a great couple days. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a blast, and we're getting ready to put the schedule out here in the coming weeks. So it's coming. It's right here on us, basically. It's end of September. But again, yeah. So if nobody has any questions, that is fantastic. Another super good synopsis and insight. The greatest thing about these Edge webinars, though, is that all of us are in it together as either dealer members or partners of the NPDA. So again, whether you're Tom O'Connor Sales Academy and a gold partner like they are, or every one of you guys is that's on the call now has been a member for 1, 2, 3, 4 years of the NPDA. So we've got a lot going on, as you're well aware, with taking care of our Harley-Davidson dealerships and all of the stuff that's going on there. We're real busy with that, and you'll see more of the NPDA kind of as the days click here and moving into the end of next week. So that's kind of where things sit with us. Again, make sure you'll get the link to the recording. You can share that with your fellow staff members. Reach out to Tom. Contact me if you need Tom or Natasha's email address. We'll get you that way too. And without further ado, we'll wrap this one up. Yeah.
Dave, Natasha just said if they go to the TOCSalesacademy.com and put in the coupon code Corona, they can get a free month of the Corona. Well, they know they've had a Corona before. But it's TOCSalesacademy.com. Get a free month of training. How do you beat that, right?
Yeah,
So
perfect.
Or call Natasha if you have any questions.
And it's going to be 80 here in Minnesota today, I think. So that Corona idea here in a handful of hours doesn't sound all bad either. But
is it Cinco de Mayo?
yeah, we're a couple hours late, but we can extend that.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate
great
you.
Great to see so many familiar faces on the call too, and we'll look forward to reaching out to you here May 22nd for the next one. See you again on another Edge webinar. Thanks, guys.
Take care.